A kid walked into the most powerful translation company in America, carrying his father's old briefcase. "I'll give you $1 million if you can translate this." The CEO laughed, showing him a document in an ancient language. What happened next made his smile disappear forever. The security guard's hand shot up before Diego Ramirez could take 3 steps into Global Link Translation Services. "Kid, you can't be in here." The voice carried across the marble lobby, drawing stares from everyone in the reception area. "This is a professional building." Diego froze, clutching his father's worn briefcase against his chest. The leather was cracked, one hinge broken, held together with duct tape, but it was the last thing his father had touched before the accident 10 months ago. "I have an appointment," Diego said, steadier than he felt. With Preston Whitmore, the room went silent. A 12-year-old kid in jeans too short and glued-together sneakers didn't have meetings with CEOs. Especially not Preston Whitmore, the billionaire who'd built Global Link into an empire. "Right," the guard said, pulling out his tablet. "And I'm having lunch with Let Him through Marcus Doctor." Rachel Morgan descended the curved staircase, her expression unreadable. His mother made the appointment 3 weeks ago before Rachel stopped herself. Before circumstances changed, before Mom got so sick she couldn't work anymore, Diego thought before a serious terminal illness. Before the doctor said weeks, maybe a month, before everything became impossible. Rachel led him to the elevator without another word. As the doors closed, she spoke quietly. "Your father was Miguel Ramirez." Diego nodded, throat too tight to answer. "He was brilliant," Rachel continued. "One of our best translators. When he died, we all—" She stopped. The company sent flowers. Diego remembered those flowers. Expensive arrangements that had made his mother cry with anger, instead of gratitude because flowers didn't pay for coffins or medical bills, or the rent they were already 3 months behind on. The elevator opened on the 24th floor. Rachel led him down a hallway, lined with photographs of Preston Whitmore, shaking hands with presidents and tech moguls. The conference room was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seattle, a table that could seat 20 people. Preston Whitmore sat at the head, flanked by 4 executives in expensive suits. They all stared at Diego like he was something that had crawled in from outside. "So," Preston said, leaning back with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is Miguel's son." The casual dismissal in his tone made Diego's hands clench. "His name was Miguel Ramirez," Diego said clearly. "And yes, I'm his son. Diego Ramirez." "Of course." Preston waved a hand as if the correction was irrelevant. "Dr. Morgan said you wanted to discuss your father's work here." Diego set the briefcase on the conference table. 5 pairs of eyes tracked the movement. "My father worked here for 8 years," Diego began. "He specialized in rare languages, ancient dialects, indigenous languages that translation software can't handle. And for the last 2 years of his life, he was creating something, a translation algorithm, a completely new approach to understanding language patterns. Company property," one executive said immediately. "Any work done by our employees belongs to Global Link, work done on company time with company resources." Diego corrected. "My father did this at home. His own time, his own computer. He documented everything." He pushed a folder across the table. Dates, times, every hour. None of it on company time. Preston flipped through the folder, his interest clearly growing. "Even if true, your father's dead. Whatever he created would be his estate's, your mother's. My mother assigned the rights to me." Diego produced a legal document that had cost them $200 they couldn't afford, before she got too sick to make decisions. "Sick?" Rachel asked gently. "A severe and advanced illness," Diego said, his voice cracking, despite his effort to stay strong. "The doctors say weeks, maybe a month. She can't work. We lost our apartment. My sister Bella and I are staying with a friend, but he couldn't finish. Couldn't say they'd be homeless soon. That he didn't know how to take care of an 8-year-old sister alone. The room fell silent. I'm sorry, Rachel said quietly. Preston was studying the documents. This algorithm, if it works as these notes suggest, it could be worth considerable money. $20 million, Diego said. Every head snapped up. I had a computer science teacher look at the code. He said companies would pay at least that, maybe more. And you're 12 years old, Preston said, that cold smile returning, claiming to own technology worth $20 million. I'm claiming to own what my father created, Diego corrected. What he spent 2 years building. What he was working on the night he died. The words hung heavy. Diego hadn't meant to say that part. Hadn't wanted to admit his father had been coding at 3 a.m., exhausted from double shifts, trying to finish one more function before bed. Hadn't wanted to admit that if his father hadn't been so tired, maybe he would have seen the red light. Quite a story, Preston said finally. But stories need proof. He pulled out a thick document. Your father's employment contract specifically states that any IP developed while working for Global Link belongs to the company. That's not legal for work done at home on personal time, Diego protested. Our lawyers disagree, Preston said smoothly. And they're excellent. He looked at Diego with something that might have been pity if it weren't so condescending. I'm sorry about your mother, but that doesn't change facts. Diego felt the world tilting. This was supposed to save them, supposed to pay for treatments, give Bella a future. I'll prove it. Diego heard himself say, give me a test, any translation challenge. If I can prove the algorithm works, prove my father's research was real and valuable, you have to acknowledge it belongs to me. Preston's eyes lit up with something predatory. A test? Any translation you want? If I can do it using my father's methods, you admit the algorithm is real, that it has value. Preston smiled slowly. How's your ancient Sumerian? Diego felt ice in his stomach. Ancient Sumerian was one of the hardest dead languages. Maybe 50 people worldwide could read it fluently. His father had been one of them. Let's make this interesting, Preston continued. I'll give you $1 million if you can translate the Morrison document. It contains fragments in 9 different languages. Some haven't been spoken in thousands of years. Our entire department has worked on it for 6 months. If you can do it now in this room, I'll pay you $1 million and we'll discuss your father's algorithm. And if I can't, then you leave. Stop claiming company property. Never contact Global Link again. Preston extended his hand. Deal. Rachel stepped forward. Preston, this is insane. He's a child. He can speak for himself. Preston cut her off, eyes never leaving Diego. Well, are you as smart as your father thought you were? The insult cut deep. Diego thought about his mom in that hospital bed, about Bella asking every night when mom was coming home, about his father working until 3 a.m., believing this algorithm would change their lives. I'll do it, Diego said, shaking Preston's hand. But I want witnesses in writing. If I translate that document, you pay me $1 million and acknowledge my father's algorithm has value. Deal, Preston said, pulling out his phone. 20 minutes later, the room had filled with people. Word had spread. Junior translators lined the walls. Someone set up a camera. Preston placed a thick document in front of Diego. Pages covered in different ancient scripts. The Morrison document, Preston announced. 9 different ancient civilizations. We've translated maybe 30% in 6 months. If this kid can do even half in an hour, I'll be impressed. Laughter rippled through the room. Diego opened his father's briefcase, pulling out a worn notebook filled with years of research on language patterns and phonetic relationships. Then he began to read. In the 3rd year of King Hammurabi's reign, Diego started, voice clear and steady. The priests of Babylon gathered to record the wisdom of the ancients. The room went quiet. "That's Babylonian Akkadian," someone whispered. "How did he?" Diego kept reading, switching to the next section. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics translated flawlessly into English, then ancient Greek, then Sanskrit. The murmurs grew louder. David, one of the executives, stood up to verify the translations against their database. His face went pale. "He's right. Every single word." "Lucky guesses," Preston said, but his voice had lost confidence. Diego switched to Old Persian. The room's energy shifted from mockery to shock. "Stop," Preston said suddenly. Diego looked up. I said, "Stop." Preston's voice cut sharp. "This is ridiculous. You're reading from something, some cheat sheet. This proves nothing." "I'm reading from my father's notes," Diego said, holding up the notebook. "His research, the pattern recognition method the algorithm uses." "Let him continue," Rachel said firmly. "You made a deal, Preston. The deal was he translate the document, not read from old notebooks." "Then test me without it," Diego said, closing the notebook and pushing it aside. "No notes, just the document." Preston's eyes narrowed. "Fine. Page 7. Classical Syriac. Without your cheat sheet." Diego looked at page 7. The script was dense, a language his father had spent months teaching him. He could hear his father's voice. "Syriac is like a bridge, Diego. It connects ancient to medieval. Listen for the patterns." Diego began translating slowly at first, then faster, as patterns clicked into place. Not memorization, understanding, because his father had taught him to see language as human thought made visible. When he finished, the room was silent. "How?" David breathed. "Nobody learns classical Syriac at 12. "My father started teaching me at 6, Diego said quietly. "Every night after work, every weekend. He said language was the greatest gift he could give me." "This is insane," an executive muttered. "Preston, if this is real, we stop this now," Preston interrupted, standing abruptly. "This demonstration is invalid. The boy is using information stolen from this company." "My father worked at home," Diego shouted, "control breaking. On his own time, his own money. He stayed up until 3 a.m. while you paid him barely enough to feed his family. He gave everything. And you didn't even notice when Diego couldn't finish." The grief hit like a wave. His father hunched over that laptop at 3 a.m. So exhausted he could barely see straight, trying to finish one more function. Then getting in the car to drive to a warehouse shift because Global Link didn't pay enough. Not seeing the red light until too late. "He's proven nothing," Preston said coldly. "Except Miguel trained his son like a performing monkey. This doesn't prove the algorithm exists or has value, and it certainly doesn't prove we owe you anything." "You promised $1 million, Rachel said, voice hard, in front of 30 witnesses. "I said if he could translate it. He's done maybe 20%, not the deal." "I can finish," Diego said desperately. "Give me time." "No," Preston said flatly. 1 minute to translate the next section. Page 12. Ancient Sumerian or the deal is off. Diego flipped to page 12, hands shaking. The Sumerian was the hardest part. Even his father had struggled with this dialect. 50 seconds, Preston said, checking his watch with a cruel smile. Diego stared at the symbols, panic rising. He knew some Sumerian, but this dialect was different. 40 seconds. Think. Remember Dad's teaching. Language is patterns. Find the pattern. 30 seconds. He could see it now. Pieces clicking into place. The way this dialect modified verbs connecting to later Akkadian. 20 seconds. I'm Preston. This is cruel. Rachel protested. 10 seconds. Preston interrupted. 9, 7. Diego opened his mouth. Translation forming. Preston slammed his hand on the table. Time's up. Demonstration over. Deal void. He looked at Diego with cold satisfaction. You're talented, kid, but talent without results is worthless. You failed. I didn't fail, Diego said, voice shaking with fury. You changed the rules because you're scared. Scared of what? Of the truth. You know the algorithm is real. You know it's worth millions, and you know it doesn't belong to you. Prove it, Preston challenged. Show me code, documentation, something more than dead man's notebooks and party tricks. Party tricks? The words hit like a slap. The algorithm is on my father's laptop, Diego said quietly. The one in the car when his voice broke. When the accident happened, then produce it. The laptop was destroyed, Rachel said softly, checking her tablet. The accident report says damaged beyond recovery. Diego felt the floor drop. The laptop, the only proof, gone. Then we're done, Preston said, gathering papers. Security will escort you out. Don't come back. If you harass Global Inc. again, our lawyers will handle it. Wait, David said. The boy clearly has knowledge from somewhere. We've investigated enough. Meeting adjourned. The room emptied within minutes. Only Diego, Rachel, and Preston remained. I'm sorry, Diego. Rachel said, I'll help however I can. Don't offer false hope. Preston cut her off. His father is dead. The algorithm is gone. He has no proof, no case. The kindest thing is letting him move on. Rachel looked at Preston like she didn't recognize him. When did you become this person? I've always been this person. Diego picked up his father's briefcase, carefully placing the notebook inside. My father was right about you, Diego said, meeting Preston's eyes. He said you were brilliant but empty, that you'd built an empire on others' work and convinced yourself you deserved it. He closed the briefcase. He said someday someone would prove you wrong. And you think that's you? No, it's my father. Even dead, he's still smarter than you'll ever be. And somehow I'm going to prove it. Diego walked to the door, then turned back. That Sumerian section you gave me 1 minute for? I know what it says. Want to hear? Preston's expression flickered. The greatest thieves are not those who take gold, but those who steal credit from the dead. For gold can be replaced, but a man's legacy, once stolen, is lost forever. Diego let the words hang like an accusation. Is that what it really says? Rachel asked. Word for word, Diego confirmed. Funny coincidence, isn't it? He left before Preston could respond, walking through the lobby out into Seattle rain. Behind him, Preston Whitmore stood frozen because he'd just realized 3 things. 1, the algorithm was real. 2, the kid could actually translate ancient Sumerian. 3, he just made a very serious mistake, and Diego Ramirez, walking through rain with his father's briefcase, was about to make sure the whole world knew it. The video hit 2 million views in 6 hours. Diego didn't know that yet. He was sitting on a bench outside Seattle Public Library, rain soaking through his jacket, staring at his father's notebook like it might contain answers he'd missed. It didn't. The algorithm was gone, the laptop destroyed, and Preston Whitmore had 30 witnesses who'd seen Diego fail the translation test. Diego? He looked up. Rachel Morgan stood there with an umbrella, her professional suit replaced by jeans and a sweater. She looked different. Smaller. More human. How did you find me? Diego asked. You mentioned your sister goes to Madison Elementary. The library is 3 blocks from there. I took a guess. Rachel sat down beside him, holding the umbrella over both of them. I wanted to apologize for what happened. Preston was cruel, deliberately cruel. He was protecting his company, Diego said flatly. That's what CEOs do, right? Not like that. Rachel pulled out her phone. Diego, you need to see something. She showed him the video. Someone in the conference room had recorded everything and posted it online. The title made Diego's stomach clench. Billionaire CEO humiliates genius kid, then realizes he's wrong. 2 million views, Rachel said quietly. And climbing. The comments are well. People are angry, very angry. Diego watched himself on the screen. Saw the moment Preston stopped him. Saw his own face crumble when time ran out. Saw Preston's cruel smile. Then he scrolled to the comments. This CEO is disgusting. That kid is clearly brilliant. I'm a linguistics professor. What that child did with those languages is extraordinary. My mother died from cancer last year. This hits different. That boy is fighting for his family and being crushed by a billionaire. Justice for Diego. There were thousands more. Diego's hands shook as he scrolled. It gets better, Rachel said. She pulled up another video. This one from the security camera in the lobby, or worse, depending on how you look at it. The lobby footage showed Diego leaving, walking past the security guard, and then, clearly audible, Diego's voice. The greatest thieves are not those who take gold, but those who steal credit from the dead. The guard had asked what he meant. Diego had explained it was the Sumerian translation, the one Preston said he'd failed to complete. Someone leaked the lobby footage. Rachel said, "It's been viewed 5 million times. People are comparing your translation to academic sources." Diego, you were right. Word for word correct. Diego felt something cold settle in his chest. So Preston knows I could have done it. That I only failed because he gave me 1 minute. Preston knows he made a mistake. Rachel corrected. A very public, very documented mistake. His phone has been ringing non-stop. Board members, investors, PR teams. This is becoming a disaster for Global Link. Good, Diego said with more bitterness than he'd known he possessed. Diego, I need to tell you something about your father. Rachel's voice dropped. Something I should have told you this morning. Diego turned to look at her fully. What? The accident? The official report says your father ran a red light, that he was at fault. Rachel took a breath. But I was here that night, working late. Your father called me at 2:47 a.m. from his car. Diego's heart stopped. Why? He just finished something. The algorithm. He was so excited he could barely speak. He said he'd cracked the final pattern, that it worked, that he needed to show me immediately. Rachel's eyes were wet now. I told him to go home, get sleep, come in the next morning. But he was so excited, so sure this was going to change his family's life. He said he was already in his car, that he'd be here in 10 minutes. And then, Diego whispered, and then he didn't arrive. I waited 20 minutes and called him. No answer. I called again. Nothing. Rachel wiped her eyes. The police called me at 3:30 a.m. Asked if I knew Miguel Ramirez. If I knew why he'd been driving downtown at 3 a.m. Diego felt like he couldn't breathe. You never told anyone this? I told the police, but Preston Rachel's voice hardened. Preston buried it. Didn't want the company associated with an employee dying while basically working. He made sure the accident report focused on the red light, not on why your father was driving exhausted at 3 a.m. to show his work to his supervisor. He covered it up. He protected the company, Rachel said, which is what he always does. But Diego, there's more. Your father had backed up the algorithm to Global Link's cloud server that night, right before he got in the car. I found the backup this afternoon. Diego's world tilted. What? Rachel pulled out a USB drive. I downloaded it before Preston could delete it. The complete algorithm. All your father's code, his research, his documentation, everything. Diego stared at the drive like it was a bomb. Why are you giving this to me? Because it belongs to you, Rachel said simply. Because your father died bringing his work to show me, and I should have driven to him instead of making him come here exhausted. Because Preston humiliated you today, and I stood there and let it happen. Her voice cracked. Because it's the right thing to do. Diego took the drive with trembling hands. Preston will fire you probably. Rachel agreed. But I've been working for a man I'm ashamed of for too long. My daughter asked me tonight why I let that CEO be mean to a kid whose mum is dying. She's 7, and she could see it was wrong. How could I not? She stood closing her umbrella. I emailed you instructions for accessing the files. They're encrypted with your father's birthday. And Diego, there's a video file in there too. Something your father recorded the night he died. I think you should watch it. Rachel walked away before Diego could respond, disappearing into the Seattle evening. Diego sat on that bench for a long time, holding the USB drive and his father's notebook, feeling the weight of both. Then he ran to the library. The library was about to close, but Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, who'd known Diego since he was 6, let him use a computer in the back room. She didn't ask questions, just brought him hot chocolate and closed the door. Diego inserted the drive, entered his father's birthday, watched the files appear on screen, folders of code, research documents, translation matrices, and one video file labeled for Diego and Bella. Diego's hand hovered over the mouse for a full minute before he clicked. His father's face filled the screen, alive, smiling, so clearly exhausted, but radiating joy. Hey, buddy, Miguel said. And Bella, if you're watching this too, if you're seeing this, it means something happened to me, and I need you to know some things. Diego's vision blurred with tears, but he didn't look away. First, the algorithm works. I just tested it on the Morrison document, the one the company has been struggling with for months. Translated the whole thing in 47 minutes, all 9 languages. It's perfect, Diego. Everything we talked about, everything I taught you about pattern recognition and linguistic bridges, it all works. Miguel leaned closer to the camera. I'm about to drive to Global Link to show Dr. Morgan. I know it's late. I know I'm exhausted, but I'm so excited I can barely think straight. This is it, buddy. This is going to change everything for our family. Diego watched his father's face, so full of hope, and wanted to scream at the screen. Don't go. Stay home. Sleep. You'll never make it there. Second thing, Miguel continued, I encrypted everything with my birthday, so only you and your mom can access it. I documented every hour I worked on this at home. Every resource I used. Everything. If Global Link tries to claim this is company property, you fight them. You hear me? This belongs to our family. I built this for you and Bella and Mom. Miguel's expression grew more serious. And third, the most important thing, Diego, you're 12 years old. You shouldn't have to worry about money or taking care of your sister or any of this. But if something happens to me, if Mom can't work, if things get hard, his voice cracked. You're going to want to be strong all the time. You're going to think you can't break down, can't ask for help, can't admit when you're scared. But buddy, being strong doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing it anyway. It means asking for help when you need it. It means crying when you need to cry. Miguel wiped his own eyes. I'm crying right now, just thinking about not being there for you. And that's okay. Feelings don't make you weak, they make you human. Diego was sobbing now. Mrs. Patterson's hot chocolate forgotten. Everything forgotten except his father's face. I love you and Bella more than anything in this world, Miguel said. More than this algorithm, more than any amount of money, more than my own life. You're my greatest achievement, not code or translations or any of it. You being you. Miguel smiled through his own tears. Now go show those people at Global Link what Miguel Ramirez's son can do. Make them see you, make them see me, and most importantly, take care of your sister and your mom. That's the real work. Everything else is just details. The video ended. Diego sat in the dark library, crying so hard he could barely breathe, clutching the USB drive that contained his father's last gift. A knock on the door. Mrs. Patterson poked her head in. "Diego, sweetie, there are some people here to see you." "I don't want." Diego started. "One of them says she's from Channel 7 News." Mrs. Patterson interrupted gently. "And there's a lawyer and someone from the Seattle Times. They all saw the videos. They want to help." Diego wiped his eyes, looked at the USB drive, looked at his father's notebook. "Make them see you. Make them see me." "Okay," Diego said, his voice stronger now. "Let them in." 10 minutes later, Diego was surrounded by people. Jennifer Kim from Channel 7, Robert Chen, a lawyer who specialized in intellectual property, Sarah Mitchell from the Seattle Times, and to Diego's shock, Dr. David Park from the Global Link conference room. "I quit," David said without preamble. "This afternoon, after watching Preston humiliate you, after seeing the videos go viral, after 20 years of watching that man crush people, I quit. And I want to help you prove that algorithm is yours. We all do." Jennifer added, "This story is everywhere. Billionaire CEO steals from dying woman's son. Genius child humiliated by corporate greed. Every news outlet in the country wants to talk to you." "I don't want to talk," Diego said. "I want to prove my father's work was real, that it has value, that it belongs to my family." Robert, the lawyer, leaned forward. "Diego, with the backup Dr. Morgan gave you, with your father's documentation, with the video evidence of you translating those languages, we have a case, a strong one, but we need to move fast. Preston will try to claim the backup was stolen company property." "It wasn't," Diego said firmly. "My father uploaded it the night he died, before Global Link had any claim to it. And I have proof." He showed them the video timestamp. The upload happened at 2:43 a.m., 4 minutes before his father called Rachel. The accident happened at 3:15 a.m. Your father uploaded his final work 32 minutes before he died, Robert said quietly, and he encrypted it for his family. "Diego, this is ironclad." He knew he'd finished something valuable and he protected it. "There's more," David said. "The Morrison document, the one you were translating today. I ran your partial translation through our verification systems. Every single word was perfect. You translated in 40 minutes what our team couldn't do in 6 months. I need to finish it," Diego said suddenly. "The full translation, all 9 languages. I need to show everyone what my father taught me, what his algorithm can do." "We can arrange that," Jennifer said. "A live demonstration tomorrow morning on air. Let the whole world watch you complete what Preston said you couldn't do." Diego thought about his father's face in that video, about his mother in a hospital bed, about 8-year-old Bella asking when things would be normal again. "One condition," Diego said. "Preston Whitmore has to be there in person watching. I want him to see exactly what he tried to steal." Jennifer smiled. "I'll make sure he gets the invitation." That night, Diego returned to the tiny apartment where he and Bella were staying with Mrs. Chen, their mom's friend. Bella was already asleep, clutching the stuffed rabbit their father had given her. Diego sat at the kitchen table with his father's notebook and the USB drive, preparing for tomorrow. At midnight, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Preston Whitmore. We need to talk. Name your price." Diego stared at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back. "Channel 7. Tomorrow morning, 9:00 a.m. Come watch me finish what you said I couldn't do. Then we'll talk about what you owe my family." He hit send and turned off his phone. Across the city in his penthouse office, Preston Whitmore read the message and realized something that made his blood run cold. He'd underestimated Miguel Ramirez's son, and now the whole world was watching. The war had just begun. The Channel 7 studio was packed by 8:30 a.m. Diego arrived with Bella, who'd insisted on coming. Dad would want me there, she'd said, with the kind of certainty only 8-year-olds possessed. Mrs. Chen had dressed them both in their best clothes, which still weren't much, but they were clean. Jennifer Kim met them at the door. We've had to turn people away, fire code. But Diego, she gestured to the studio. Look through the window. Diego could see the set. Not the usual news desk, but a simple table with 2 chairs facing each other. On one side, the Morrison document spread out like an accusation. On the other, an empty chair waiting for him. But it was the audience that made Diego's breath catch. The studio sat maybe 50 people. Every seat was full. And not with random audience members. These were people who mattered. Linguistics professors from the University of Washington, translators from competing firms, tech CEOs who understood what a revolutionary algorithm meant, journalists from national outlets, and in the front row, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, Preston Whitmore. He tried to refuse, Jennifer said quietly, sent lawyers saying he was too busy. But when I mentioned we'd do the segment anyway and discuss his absence, he showed up with his entire legal team. She pointed to 3 people in expensive suits sitting behind Preston. Good, Diego said. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. I want him to see this. Rachel Morgan appeared from backstage. She looked different, tired, but lighter somehow, like she'd put down a weight she'd been carrying too long. I was fired at 6:00 a.m., she said, without preamble. Preston called personally, said I'd stolen company property, and he was considering criminal charges. Rachel, I'm so sorry. Don't be, Rachel interrupted. Best thing that ever happened to me. My daughter hugged me this morning and said she was proud of me for helping you. That's worth more than any job. She handed Diego a folder. Your father's complete documentation. Every date, every hour, every note. I added my own testimony about the night he died when he uploaded the algorithm. Everything. Preston's lawyers can't touch this. Diego took the folder with trembling hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just show them what Miguel Ramirez's son can do. At 8:55 a.m., Jennifer led Diego to the set. The cameras were already rolling, broadcasting live to Channel 7's streaming platform. The view counter in the corner was climbing. 50,000 viewers, 100,000, 200,000. Diego sat in the chair, Bella beside him for moral support. Across from him, the Morrison document waited. Jennifer took her position. Good morning. I'm Jennifer Kim, and you're watching what may be the most important demonstration in translation history. 12-year-old Diego Ramirez claims his late father, Miguel Ramirez, created a revolutionary translation algorithm. Yesterday, Global Link CEO Preston Whitmore challenged Diego to translate this document containing 9 ancient languages for $1 million. The camera panned to Preston, whose expression was carefully neutral. Diego completed partial translations of 4 languages before Mr. Whitmore stopped the demonstration. Jennifer continued. Today, Diego will complete 9 languages in full on live television. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to make a statement before we begin? Preston stood, smoothing his tie. He looked directly at the camera, not at Diego. I'm here as a courtesy, Preston said, his voice carrying that same condescending tone from the conference room. The boy has impressive language skills. No one denies that. His father taught him well. But translating ancient texts doesn't prove an algorithm exists. It proves he has a good memory and training. So you don't believe the algorithm is real? Jennifer asked. I believe Miguel Ramirez was a talented translator who taught his son. I don't believe a cleaning lady's husband created something worth millions that our entire research department missed. Preston sat back down. But I'm willing to be proven wrong. The condescension in his voice made several people in the audience shift uncomfortably. Diego heard Bella's sharp intake of breath. He called Dad a cleaning lady's husband. Bella whispered. Diego put a hand on her arm. It's okay. Dad would say, let the work speak. Jennifer turned to Diego. Are you ready? Diego nodded. He opened his father's notebook, the one filled with years of research and love. Then he began. The Morrison document is a compilation of 9 ancient texts, Diego said, his voice clear despite his nerves. It was discovered in 1987 by archaeologist James Morrison in what's now Iraq. The texts span different civilizations and time periods. No one has successfully translated the complete document because each section requires expertise in a different dead language. He picked up the first page. I'll start where Mr. Whitmore stopped me yesterday. Page 12. Ancient Sumerian. Old Babylonian dialect. The room went silent. Diego could feel Preston's eyes on him, waiting for him to fail. Diego began reading, not just translating words, but explaining the context, the grammatical structures his father had taught him to recognize the patterns that connected this dialect to others. In the time before memory, Diego translated, the wise men gathered to preserve knowledge. They understood that languages die, but truth remains to those who come after. Seek not the words, but the meaning behind them. He looked up at the camera. This section is about preservation, about how knowledge survives when the people who created it don't. My father understood that. He spent his life preserving dying languages because he believed everyone deserves to be heard, even the dead. Diego's voice cracked on the last word, but he pushed through. He moved to the next section, Classical Syriac, and translated it flawlessly. Then Biblical Hebrew, then Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, reading the symbols like they were his native language. The view counter kept climbing. 500,000, 800,000, 1 million. With each language, Diego didn't just translate. He explained, he taught. He made the dead languages come alive, showing how they connected to each other, how understanding one helped unlock another. This was his father's gift, not just knowing languages, but understanding how human beings communicate across time and culture. By the time he reached the 7th language, Old Persian ununiform, several linguistics professors in the audience were taking notes. One was openly crying. This is extraordinary, someone whispered. He's not just translating. He's demonstrating a completely new approach to comparative linguistics. Preston's expression had shifted from condescending to confused to something that might have been fear because everyone in that room could see what Diego was proving. The algorithm was real. Miguel Ramirez had created something revolutionary, and this 12-year-old boy understood it well enough to demonstrate it live. Diego moved to the 8th language, Adian, and translated a section about fathers and sons, about legacies passed down through generations. His voice broke multiple times, but he never stopped. A father's greatest work, he read, is not what he builds with his hands, but what he plants in his children's hearts. For buildings crumble and empires fall, but a lesson learned in love endures forever. Bella was crying now. So was Rachel. Even Jennifer Kim had to wipe her eyes. Finally, Diego reached the 9th section, the one he'd failed yesterday. Ancient Sumerian, the dialect so rare that almost no one could read it. Yesterday, Mr. Whitmore gave me 1 minute to translate this section, Diego said, looking directly at Preston. He knew I couldn't do it that fast. No one could, but he didn't care about whether I could actually do it. He cared about making me fail in front of witnesses. Preston's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. So, let me take my time now, Diego continued. Let me show you what my father taught me, what he died trying to protect. Diego read the Sumerian section slowly, carefully, explaining each symbol and grammatical structure. The translation he'd recited in Preston's office had been perfect. Now he proved it by showing his work, demonstrating the pattern recognition method his father had developed. When he finished, the studio erupted in applause. Jennifer turned to Preston. Mr. Whitmore, Diego has just translated a document your company has been working on for 6 months. He did it in 90 minutes on live television. What do you say now? Preston stood slowly. For a moment, Diego thought he might actually apologize, might admit he'd been wrong. Instead, Preston said, "Impressive performance, but it still doesn't prove the algorithm itself is." "I have the algorithm," Diego interrupted. He pulled out the USB drive Rachel had given him. "My father uploaded it to Global Link's cloud server the night he died at 2:43 a.m., 32 minutes before the accident that killed him." He looked at Rachel, who nodded and stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Rachel Morgan, former COO of Global Link," Rachel said, her voice steady. "I can testify that Miguel Ramirez called me at 2:47 a.m. the night he died. He just completed the algorithm and wanted to show me immediately. I told him to wait until morning. He was so excited about what this would mean for his family that he got in his car anyway, exhausted," and her voice broke. "And he didn't make it. The accident happened at 3:15 a.m. But before he left his house, he uploaded his complete work to our server and encrypted it for his family. I downloaded it yesterday and gave it to Diego. It's his father's legacy. It belongs to him." Preston's face had gone pale. "You stole company property." "I preserved a dead man's final gift to his children," Rachel corrected. "Miguel uploaded it as personal files to a personal encrypted folder. Global Link has no legal claim to it." Robert Chen, the lawyer, stood. "I've reviewed the documentation. Miguel Ramirez worked on this algorithm exclusively at home, on personal time, using personal resources. He documented everything meticulously, and he uploaded the final version before Global Link could claim any rights to it. Legally, this belongs to his estate, which means it belongs to Diego." "We'll see what our lawyers say," Preston said. "We already know what they'll say," Robert replied. "I contacted them this morning, showed them the evidence. They advised Global Link to settle immediately before this becomes an even bigger public relations disaster than it already is." Preston looked at the cameras, at the view counter that now showed 2 million people watching live, at the linguists and journalists and tech CEOs all staring at him with a mixture of fascination and disgust. "This is ridiculous," Preston said. "The boy did a nice parlor trick with some dead languages." "That doesn't mean Mr. Whitmore," Jennifer interrupted. "Before we went live, we had 3 linguistics professors independently verify Diego's translations against the most current academic research. They've all confirmed. Every word is correct. Every interpretation is not just accurate, but insightful. Diego just demonstrated a level of linguistic understanding that most PhD candidates don't possess." She turned to the camera. "But more than that, he showed us something his father understood. That language isn't just about words. It's about connection. It's about preserving the voices of people who came before us. It's about making sure that genius, wherever it comes from, whether from a billionaire's research lab or from a translator working at 3 a.m. to give his family a better life, gets recognized." Preston stood abruptly. "I've heard enough. My lawyers will be in touch." He started to leave, but Diego's voice stopped him. "My father respected you," Diego said quietly. The room went silent. "He kept a picture of you on his desk at home from when Global Link won the Translation Excellence Award. You were receiving the award for work. My father did. He translated the UN documents that won you that recognition. But he kept the picture anyway because he believed in the company's mission. He believed you cared about languages, about preservation, about giving voice to the voiceless." Diego stood walking toward Preston. "When did you stop caring? When did it become about money and power instead of about the work? When did you decide that people like my father, people who actually do the work while you take the credit? When did you decide we were disposable?" Preston's face had gone red. "I built this company from nothing. My father built your success," Diego interrupted. "And when he died bringing you his greatest work, you buried it. You buried him. You made sure no one knew he'd been working himself to death for you. And then when his son came asking for help, you humiliated me in front of your entire staff. I don't have to listen to this, Preston said. Yes, you do, Bella said, suddenly standing up. Her small voice carried across the studio. You have to listen because my dad died trying to show you something important and you didn't care. You have to listen because my mom is dying, and you could help but you won't. You have to listen because you're mean, and my dad was nice, and nice should matter more than mean. The studio was absolutely silent. Bella's simple, devastating logic hung in the air. Preston looked at this 8-year-old girl, then at Diego, then at the 2 million people watching him on camera. Diego could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the PR disaster, the legal liability, the public humiliation. But Diego didn't want Preston's calculation. He wanted his recognition. My father died believing his work mattered. Diego said that it would help people, that it would make sure dying languages weren't lost forever. He didn't care about being rich or famous. He cared about preserving human voices, about making sure everyone could be understood. Diego picked up his father's notebook. This algorithm is worth millions, maybe more. But that's not why it matters. It matters because it works. Because it proves my father was a genius. Because it shows that brilliance doesn't only come from expensive universities or corner offices. It comes from people who care enough to work until 3 a.m. because they believe in something bigger than themselves. He looked directly at Preston. You can buy me out. You can have your lawyers fight this in court for years. You can try to destroy my father's reputation and mine, but you can't change what just happened here. 2 million people just watched a 12-year-old kid do what your entire research department couldn't. And they all know now what you tried to hide. That Miguel Ramirez was brilliant, and you tried to steal from his children. Preston stood frozen, his carefully constructed mask completely shattered. So here's my offer, Diego said. You acknowledge publicly that my father created this algorithm. You pay the $1 million you promised yesterday, and you establish a translation foundation in Miguel Ramirez's name, dedicated to preserving dying languages and supporting families of translators who give their lives to this work. And if I refuse, Preston asked, then we'll see you in court, Robert Chen said, stepping forward. And I promise you every single day of that trial will be televised. Every email you sent, every decision you made, every time you profited from someone else's work, it will all become public record. Preston looked at his lawyers who were all shaking their heads, silently advising him to settle. He looked at the cameras at his empire crumbling in real time. And finally, he looked at Diego and Bella, 2 children who'd lost everything, but still had more dignity than he'd shown in years. I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork, Preston said quietly. Then he walked out of the studio. The moment the door closed behind him, the studio erupted. People were cheering, crying, embracing each other. The view counter showed 3 million people watching. Jennifer Kim pulled Diego and Bella into a hug. You did it. You actually did it. But Diego wasn't looking at the cameras or the celebrating crowd. He was looking at his father's notebook, at the worn pages filled with a dead man's handwriting, at the proof that love and dedication and brilliance mattered more than power or money. We did it, Dad, Diego whispered. We showed them. We made them see you. And somewhere, he liked to believe, Miguel Ramirez was smiling. The check arrived 3 days later, not by mail, not through lawyers. Preston Whitmore delivered it himself. Diego was at the hospital when the nurse came to find him. There's a man in the lobby asking for you, says it's important. Diego left his mother's room where she'd been sleeping more than waking lately and found Preston standing by the windows looking uncomfortable in a place where money couldn't fix anything. I could have mailed this, Preston said without preamble, pulling an envelope from his jacket. But I needed to see you face to face. Diego didn't take the envelope. Why? Because I've been thinking about what you said, about when I stopped caring. Preston sat down heavily in one of the waiting room chairs. I built Global Link because I loved languages. Because I believed translation could connect people across cultures, preserve history, give voice to the forgotten. He looked at Diego. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that it became about market share and profit margins and beating competitors. The actual work, the reason I started, got lost. My father never forgot, Diego said quietly. No, he didn't. Preston opened the envelope, showing Diego the check. $1 million. Your father was everything I used to be, everything I should have stayed. And when he died, trying to show me his greatest work, I was too arrogant to even look at it properly. He handed Diego the envelope. This is what I owe you legally, but I owe you more than money. I owe you the truth. Preston pulled out his phone, showing Diego an email dated 10 months ago. The subject line read, Miguel Ramirez, concerning his final project. I received this the morning after your father died, Preston said. From Dr. Morgan. She explained about his call, about the algorithm, about how excited he'd been. She suggested we investigate, maybe honor his work somehow. Diego read the email, his chest tightening. I deleted it, Preston said. Told Rachel to focus on current projects, that Miguel's personal work wasn't our concern. I didn't want the liability of an employee dying while essentially working. Didn't want questions about whether we'd pushed him too hard, paid him too little. You covered it up, Diego said, his voice shaking. I protected the company. That's what I told myself. But really, I was protecting my own image. Preston looked at his hands. I've been asking myself for 3 days why I did that. Why I chose corporate liability over honoring a brilliant man's final gift to his children. And Diego asked, because it was easier. Because dead employees are problems to manage, not people to remember. Because I'd spent 20 years building walls between myself and the human cost of my decisions. Preston met Diego's eyes. Your father deserved better. You and your sister deserved better. I'm sorry. Diego had imagined this moment 100 times. Preston groveling, begging forgiveness. He'd imagined feeling triumphant, powerful, vindicated. Instead, he just felt tired. My mom is dying, Diego said. Stage 4 cancer. The doctors say days, maybe a week. That's what this money could have prevented if you'd paid my father what his work was worth when he was alive. If you'd given him health insurance that covered his family. If you'd created an environment where he didn't have to work until 3 a.m. just to feel like he was providing. Preston's face crumpled. I know. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back time, Diego said. Sorry doesn't give me more days with my mom. Sorry doesn't change the fact that Bella is 8 years old and about to lose both parents. No, Preston agreed. It doesn't. But maybe this does. He pulled out another document, the Miguel Ramirez Translation Foundation. $20 million in initial funding from Global Link. Its mission to preserve dying languages, support translators and their families, and ensure that no one working in this field has to choose between their passion and feeding their children. Diego took the document with shaking hands. 20 million. The algorithm is worth more than that. Much more. But your lawyer and I agreed. You keep full rights to the algorithm. Global Link licenses it for a fair price. And we use those licensing fees to fund the foundation in perpetuity. Preston's voice was quiet. Your father's work will save languages for generations. That's the legacy he deserves. Why are you doing this? Diego asked. 3 days ago, you called my father a cleaning lady's husband. Preston flinched. I know what I said. I was trying to diminish him because his brilliance made me feel small. But Diego, 3 days ago, 2 million people watched a 12-year-old boy demonstrate more integrity, more courage, and more genuine brilliance than I've shown in my entire career. You didn't just prove your father was a genius. You proved I was a fraud. You're not a fraud, Diego said, surprising himself. You built something real. You just forgot why you built it. Preston was quiet for a long moment. Your father used to leave notes on my desk. Did you know that? Little sticky notes with interesting translation challenges, obscure linguistic connections, things he thought I'd find fascinating. I threw most of them away without reading them, too busy with important meetings to care about a translator's intellectual curiosity. He pulled a crumpled yellow sticky note from his wallet. I kept one. Don't know why. It says, Preston found a connection between Hittite and ancient Finnish that scholars missed. Language is like music. Sometimes the harmony is more important than the melody. Thought you'd appreciate it. Miguel Preston's hands were shaking. I never responded, never even acknowledged it. He was trying to share his passion with me, trying to connect, and I couldn't be bothered. Diego felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't the villain he'd imagined. This was just a man who'd made terrible choices and was finally painfully understanding what he'd lost. He would have forgiven you, Diego said quietly. My father believed people could change, that making mistakes didn't define you. How you responded to them did. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not, Diego agreed. But Bella and I need this foundation to work. We need the money to take care of Mom's medical bills to build a future. And we need someone who understands the translation world to help run it properly. He looked Preston in the eye. So here's what I'm offering. You work with us. You help build this foundation into something Dad would be proud of. You use your connections, your business knowledge, your resources, and maybe by doing that, you become the person you were when you started Global Link. Preston stared at him. You trust me after everything? I trust you to want to be better, Diego said. That's different, but it's a start. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Diego, your mother is awake. She's asking for you and Isabella. Diego stood immediately. Preston rose with him. Can I? Preston stopped himself. I'm sorry. This is your time with her. Wait, Diego said. He didn't know why exactly. Maybe because his father had believed in giving people chances. Maybe because anger was exhausting and his mother didn't have much time left. Come with me just for a minute. I want her to know the foundation is real. The Dad's work mattered. They walked to Sophia's room together. Bella was already there, holding their mother's hand. Sophia looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors surrounding her. Mom, Diego said gently. Someone's here to see you. Sophia's eyes focused on Preston. Recognition flickered across her face. You're the CEO from Miguel's company. Yes, ma'am, Preston said, his voice thick. I wanted to tell you personally, your husband was a brilliant man. The algorithm he created is revolutionary. And we're establishing a foundation in his name to honor his work and support others like him. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Miguel's foundation. The Miguel Ramirez Translation Foundation, Preston confirmed. It will preserve dying languages and help translator families. His legacy will live on. He'd like that, Sophia whispered. He always said languages were voices from the past, asking not to be forgotten. She looked at Diego and Bella. You did this. You made them see your father. We did it together, Mom, Diego said, taking her other hand. All of us. Even Mr. Whitmore helped in the end. Sophia smiled. And for a moment, she looked like the strong woman she'd been before illness took that strength. Miguel would be so proud. Not because you got the money, but because you fought for what was right. She closed her eyes, exhausted from even that short conversation. The doctor pulled Diego aside moments later. Her vitals are declining. We're making her comfortable, but he didn't need to finish. How long? Diego asked. Hours? Maybe a day. I'm sorry. Diego nodded numb. He'd known this was coming, but knowing didn't make it easier. Preston approached quietly. I'll go. But Diego, he pulled out a card. This has my personal number. Day or night. Whatever you and Bella need, you call me. I mean that. Thank you. Diego managed. After Preston left, Diego and Bella sat with their mother, holding her hands, telling her about the live demonstration, about how the whole world had seen Dad's brilliance, about how they were going to be okay. Sophia drifted in and out, but each time she woke, she smiled at her children like they'd given her the greatest gift imaginable. "Your father," she whispered at one point. "He's waiting for me. I can feel him." "We love you, Mom," Bella said, crying. "Please don't go." "Oh, sweetheart," Sophia touched Bella's face gently. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm in every hug you give your brother. Every time you're brave, even when you're scared. Every time you stand up for what's right, like Diego did, I'm there." She looked at Diego. "Take care of each other. And remember, you're not alone. Your father and I, we're always with you, always." Sophia closed her eyes. And sometime in the dark hours before dawn, with her children holding her hands, she slipped away. When the sun rose on Seattle that morning, Diego and Bella were orphans. But they weren't alone. And their father's legacy, preserved in code and courage and a foundation that would save countless voices from silence, lived on. 1 year later, Diego stood in front of the Miguel Ramirez Translation Foundation headquarters. The building wasn't massive, just 3 floors in downtown Seattle, but it was theirs. The sign above the entrance showed his father's name and letters that caught the morning light. "You ready?" Bella asked, squeezing his hand. Diego nodded. Today was the official opening ceremony. Press, dignitaries, linguistics professors from around the world, but more importantly, 30 translator families who'd received grants, scholarships, and support over the past year. 37 families who wouldn't have to choose between their passion and feeding their children. Inside, the lobby held a memorial wall, photographs of translators who'd given their lives to preserving languages. Miguel's photo was in the center, not because he was more important, but because he represented all of them. The invisible people doing extraordinary work. Rachel Morgan approached, looking lighter than Diego had ever seen her. "The translation lab is ready. 5 workstations, access to every linguistic database in the world, and the algorithm running on all of them." "Dad would love this," Diego said quietly. "He does love it," Rachel corrected gently. "Somewhere. He's watching you honor his work by helping others." The ceremony began at 10 o'clock. Preston gave the opening remarks, and Diego barely recognized him. The arrogant CEO was gone, replaced by someone who actually listened, who spoke about translators with genuine respect, who understood that profit without purpose was emptiness. "Miguel Ramirez taught me something I'd forgotten," Preston said to the assembled crowd. "That the measure of our success isn't what we accumulate, but what we give. This foundation exists because a brilliant man loved his children enough to work himself to exhaustion, and because his children loved him enough to fight for his legacy." Preston looked directly at Diego and Bella. They didn't fight for money. They fought for recognition, for dignity, for the simple acknowledgement that their father's life mattered. In doing so, they reminded all of us what actually matters. When it was Diego's time to speak, he pulled out his father's notebook, worn now from constant use, but still precious. "My father used to say that dead languages aren't really dead," Diego began. "They're just waiting for someone to listen." He spent his life listening to voices from the past, making sure they weren't forgotten. He paused, looking at the families in the audience. But it's not just ancient languages that need to be heard. It's the people doing the work right now. The translators staying up late, juggling multiple jobs, choosing between paying bills and pursuing their passion. My father was one of those people, and he shouldn't have had to choose. Diego held up the notebook. This foundation makes sure others don't have to make that choice. But it's more than money. It's recognition. It's saying your work matters. Your voice matters. You matter. Bella stepped forward, holding something wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it carefully. The broken knight from a chess set they'd found in their father's belongings. Our dad taught us that broken things can still be valuable, Bella said, her voice clear despite her nerves. This piece was broken, but he kept it because it reminded him that being damaged doesn't mean being worthless. He was tired and hurt and struggling, but he was still brilliant, still valuable, still worth remembering. She placed the broken knight on a shelf beside Miguel's photo. This is for everyone who feels broken. You're not. You're just waiting for someone to see your value. The audience erupted in applause, many openly crying. After the ceremony, families approached Diego and Bella, a woman from Somalia whose indigenous language was dying. She'd received a grant to document it before the last speakers passed away. A man from Peru who could now afford software to digitize ancient Incan texts. A teenage girl whose translator mother had died. Now on a scholarship to study linguistics at university. Each story was different. Each story was the same. People who'd been invisible now being seen. At noon, Diego and Bella walked to the rooftop garden Rachel had designed. Seattle spread below them. The city where their parents had struggled and dreamed and ultimately given everything. Mom and Dad would be proud, Bella said. They are proud, Diego corrected. He could feel it in every success story, every preserved language, every family helped. His parents' love transformed into something tangible that would outlive all of them. Preston joined them on the roof. The university just called. They want to name their linguistics department after Miguel. And 3 tech companies have requested licensing agreements for the algorithm. The foundation will be fully funded for at least 20 years. What about you? Diego asked. Are you happy? Preston considered the question. I'm useful. That's better than happy. I spent 20 years being successful and miserable. Now I'm working harder than ever and actually sleeping at night. He smiled. Your father's final gift wasn't just the algorithm. It was showing me that success without purpose is just expensive emptiness. As the sun set over Seattle, Diego opened his father's notebook one last time. On the last page in his father's handwriting was a quote in ancient Sumerian. Diego had translated it 100 times, but it never stopped meaning something new. The greatest inheritance is not gold or land, but the courage to stand for what is right, when standing costs everything. Diego closed the notebook gently. His father had stood for what was right, even when it cost him everything, and Diego had made sure the world knew it. The algorithm would preserve 1,000 dying languages. The foundation would support countless families. Miguel Ramirez's name would be remembered by generations of translators. But more than that, more than any of it, a 12-year-old boy had looked at the most powerful CEO in his industry and said, "My father mattered." And the world had listened. Because sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. Sometimes broken things are the most valuable. And sometimes love and courage, and the simple refusal to be invisible, can change everything.